What is up, YouTube fam? Robbie C here, and today we are out at George Ward Park talking about a concept that is coming up a lot more in some of the mental coaching lessons that I'm doing, and I thought it was pretty important, so I figured I'd make a video on it. Today we want to talk about the 5 most important shots during your round, because I'm going to go ahead and say it in the intro. As much as the scorecard wants us to believe that all strokes are created equal, there are just simply going to be some shots that are more impactful on our mental state throughout the round. So I want to address them and how we can sort of approach them correctly and embrace them to be strengths for our round instead of really deficits that we keep putting ourselves in. But before we dive in, we have to ask the most important question of the day. How you doing today, OC? You having a good one?
So catch me if I fall.
All right, so like I said, from the coaching concept of things that I'm kind of bundling up here, because I'll go ahead and tell you that we've like hit the switch, I think, where we're actually just going to start staying cold in the winter here in Alabama. But it is 40 degrees on the, like, according to the weather, but the feels like is in the low 30s. So we're out here vibing, and my northern folk would be proud of me. I'm in just a hoodie and a t-shirt and a pair of pants. So trying to embrace the cold and get, stronger mental endurance. But anywho, the idea that some shots are more important than others is one that feels like it goes against some practical advice that I've given in the past, which is, let's say you mess up on a hole, that bogey isn't more or less important than another bogey that you took earlier on in the round. And that's why I think that the statement, the scorecard is telling you that certain strokes are the same is exactly true. But if we really want to improve, we have to be honest with ourselves mentally. So these 5 shots are shots that I have talked with any student that we have gone over what happened, what went great during a tournament run, what went poorly during a tournament run. All 5 of these shots have come up as a relevant point in our breakdown or debrief of the round. And we're starting with the first one. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, we find ourselves here on the tee because the first shot that is the most important one of your round is your first drive. Now, your first drive is important because this is the start of the round. This is where everything is sort of culminating and coming to. You've come out to the course today to do this activity, and this sets the tone for all of it. So when we walk up to the first tee shot, yes, there are going to be important tee shots, so you have about probably at least 8 more of them if you're playing a 9-hole course. But if you're playing an 18-hole course, we've got 17 more tee shots. And while some may feel like, hey, they matter or they're going to be something of importance, the first one sets the tone for everything. Because if I throw this poorly, my confidence is immediately shot. How am I going to score on anything today? My first tee shot could set me up for my first putt, which, spoiler alert, may or may not be on the course or the list. Hopefully your first putt of the day is on the course. But I want to make sure that my first tee shot of the day goes well. So one of the things that I want to think about in order to adjust to my first tee shot of the day is I want to think about what's a comfortable distance while getting out there and throwing. I'm stepping up to this hole, and it is, let's say I'm playing to the 270-foot location. Can I get a mid-range to sort of turn over into that distance? Well, for me, absolutely. Even with Precious Child, there is a chance that I could get that pig to turn all the way over at 270 feet. So while I could get a putter there, it's cold. My hands are like actually light pink because the blood is trying to get going to them. So I know that I'm just not necessarily gonna have the juice on them today. So I'm gonna step up to a mid-range, and the reason that I'm gonna step up to a mid-range is because I want this first shot to not be something that I have to go maximum effort, maximum power into in order to get going. Because my first tee shot of the day doesn't always have to be my first shot of the day, because the second important shot for the top 5 shots is your first shot of the day. Now that seems like such a funny distinction, but we'll talk about the first shot of the day here in a second. But what I want to make sure that what I'm trying to do is on the first tee shot, I am just clear mind, trying to execute, trying to say, hey, this is the line I want to throw and I want to go for it. Every time that I play a course, unless I'm playing something that is just pure pitch and putt, super short, gotta go for it, I almost always walk into the first hole of a round, whether I'm playing a shotgun start and I'm starting on like hole 13, or whether I'm playing a flex start where I get to start on hole 1 guaranteed. I always try to accept that a par on hole 1 is completely acceptable, because I want to make sure that it's just about setting a healthy expectation for the round. So someone who uses the attack hole strategy, for most amateurs, if you shoot 5 under par at every course you played, once again, unless you're playing like super easy pitch and putts, which are like really short 200-foot-ish average holes, shooting under par is going to win you a lot of amateur divisions, especially if you're shooting 5 under par. So the attack hole strategy is picking, hey, here are 5 holes that I'm going to press. I'm going to throw a more aggressive tee shot trying to get the birdie, because I know if I do that, I don't necessarily bring bogey into play. And then every other hole I am playing for par. If I get a birdie, that's great, but I am completely content. I do not feel my plan is derailed going for a par, because going for pars will result in birdies. Going for birdies on every hole is often going to bring bogey into play. So 2 off the first, because we're just playing a casual round. We're gonna go with the base plastic dune here. And that just tells me, okay, my hands are way colder than I'm giving them credit for. So that did not go great. Yeah, that feels basically terrible coming off of my hand, but that's okay. So what we're gonna try to do is we're going to try and throw we're gonna go ozone here and just try to give it some height. It is funny trying to go for this one, because you want this shot to move left to right, but there's all of the low ceiling is like slanted on the left side. So you kind of just got to throw a straight shot right at it, which is difficult with something as flippy as the ozone. But let's see what we can do. And that's perfect. That's right up there under the basket. Once again, low effort. Do I love that I'm having to throw an ozone because my arm and my hands are that cold? No, but that's the reality. And thus we see with the importance of the first tee shot of the day that happens. But your first shot, like we mentioned, doesn't always have to be the tee shot. Now, like we said, your first drive and your first throw can be different shots. I can actually get to the course early and try to warm up and make sure that I have everything nice and loose. I can do some stretching. I can make sure that things are feeling comfortable. And if I'm throwing my first throw of the day, I don't necessarily have to make it a drive to a basket. Here, this is not a hole. This is sort of an approach shot. And approach shots are what I personally love to have as my first throws of the day, because my first throw, I want it to be something nice and controlled, and it gives me a really good feel into how everything's firing that day. Am I over gripping? Am I running up too fast into the shot? So I can throw some hopeful good standstill shots here on my first throws of the day and say, awesome, okay, that was perfectly straight. Fantastic. I can take this polecat and I can throw it on a little more hyzer. Boom, lands right next to the basket. And of course, we have our Zone OS for the last one. So I'm gonna have to throw it a bit wider because it's gonna fade in. All of those feel like really good first shots of the day because they all land close to the basket. They've all given me a chance looking at a putt, and they flew on the lines that I looked for. I want my first shot of the day to be something that's very executable. Because let's say that my first shot and my first drive are put together. I think that's where you have a lot of mental collapse, because let's say your first drive of the day is just not good. You shank it, you're feeling a little tight, you rushed out of the car, you rushed out of the office to make sure you get to work in time, and you put those two important shots together. That means that there is so much pressure in, whoop, guess it's just gonna be one of those rounds. Because trust me, I know that we have all thrown a tee shot, especially early on in the round, and said something like that before when playing the game of disc golf. So taking just 60 seconds to, even before you say, hey, we're gonna start the round, you say, hey, can I throw a couple off the tee? I love when the opening hole requires maybe a mid-range or a fairway driver, but not necessarily a putter. I'll be like, can I throw 2 warm-up shots off the tee real fast? And I'll just grab 2 throwing putters and throw those off the tee and pick them up on the fairway as we walk up. Takes the pressure off and separates those first 2 shots so that I want to throw whatever I would say is a controlled distance that doesn't require a ton of effort. That's what I want my first shot to be, so that I can take that pressure off and let myself see an executed shot to how I want it to be right off the bat. Now that brings us to our third most important shot of the round. And once again, I think all of these are important. I don't know that I would put one over the other on this list, because I think all 5 are more important than your standard shots. And that is going to be your first putt of the day. Your first putt of the day means so much, because at the end of the day, we're always going to have to close out the hole. We can throw a great drive, but if my great drive lands me, let's say, over yonder, I went with the ozone and I didn't actually need all of that disc to get here, and I found myself long of the basket because I carried, as we should, and I have this long look, but I noticed that, let's say, even say 2 people are closer to the basket than I am. All of a sudden, this first putt of the day has a ton of pressure to it for me to try to convert. And I can look at that and say, oh, we barely hung on because we putted and missed left, but the disc catcher did its thing and caught me. I could have all of these second guessing on it. And as you heard from the first shot and the first drive, the reason the first putt matters is because it's going to put a lot of expectations on what we're going to do throughout the round. For me, I love for my first putt to be in the actually 25-foot range, because if it's inside of 20 feet, for me, I feel like I should be making those every day of the week, right? I should be converting on 20-foot putts all the time. So it is an absolute must make for me if I land inside of 20 feet on my first drive. However, if I land at 25 feet, that is the edge of my must make range for me. It's just outside of my must make range. And so if I can throw a confident putt and bang that putt into the basket, well, I'm gonna feel fantastic, like I'm on top of the world and can make anything. But if I miss it, I also give myself a little bit of grace. I think that's something that's lacking in a lot of disc golfers, especially those who are trying to push to that next level, is giving yourself the grace to make mistakes, giving yourself the grace to not be perfect. And all of these shots that we're talking about today have that layer of grace. Can be lacking, but it's okay, I get it. However, we did talk about how our first shot of the day doesn't have to be our first drive, and I think that our first putt of the day doesn't always have to be necessarily one that we find ourselves on the course. We can get used to our putt and see how our putt's feeling that day by just simply showing up a few minutes early. So I can't encourage enough getting to the course just a few minutes early and throwing a couple of putts. The putting motion is and should be vastly different than the throwing motion. And so I want to make sure that I have this sort of loosened up. And so what I like to do is, I like to, especially here in the colder weather, I like to 3, 4, 5, yeah. So we're like 15 feet away from the basket, 16 feet away from the basket, really not that far away from the basket. But the reason for this is because I want to have a putting motion that I am seeing the putter go into the basket. The reason I'm warming up is to build confidence and to get the muscles flowing, get things loose. So I want to make sure the hands are getting nice and warm. I want to make sure the putters are getting nice and warm. And I don't want to be working on these 25 and 30 footers, because hopefully during the round, I'm not going to have that many of them. I'm going to be throwing accurately. I'm going to be landing close to the basket. So I want to land in this comfort range, especially in places that, like, if I landed here on a drive and I had this putt for a birdie look, I'm gonna feel way more frustrated at myself if I'm unable to convert from this distance than I am if I land at 30 to 35 feet. And if you're a good putter, I'll go ahead and give you my little pro tip. I actually always end on a miss, because if you're a good putter, statistically, you're gonna make more putts than you miss. So if I miss one, then I've got a better chance of making the next one. But that might be like a little weird mental trick that I do. Now, if you're still with me at this point in the video, you can notice that obviously we've done a lot of firsts, and the firsts are all because of expectations and feelings. And I think that is something that is probably the real core of this video. Is we mentioned it before heading to the practice green, that the expectations we put on ourselves and the lack of grace that we give ourselves. I understand competitors want to have this drive, this push, and that drive and push is sort of what separates the good competitors from the great competitors, because they have that fire inside of them. I believe that's what we called it. We had an adjective, but I can't remember what it was. But that fire inside of them that Cadence had, that we fought when Cadence pushed her way to her first DGPT victory. That fire pushes us to excellence. And I'll go ahead and tell you that our fourth throw is also a first, but this one probably will apply to less. However, for the people it does apply to, you absolutely know this one to be true, because it is so important, and it is one that you could sneak into your warm-up shots as well. But we'll talk about that in a second, because I've mentioned it, but the holidays are here, and if you want, we are doing lessons still over on foundationdisc.com. You can go to the Get Better tab at the top, and you can find lessons there. It doesn't have to be us working on your backhand form. It doesn't even have to be us working on your putting form. It can be purely mental. I think I've had a couple of students that I've started working with recently who they showed up and they were like, yeah, I'm not necessarily looking to work on any of the finer mechanics of the throw or anything like that. If it comes up, it comes up. But we are solely working on the mental side of things, because you've heard me say it here on the channel before. I truly, truly believe if you can throw 250 feet with some accuracy, and you can make all of your 20-footers and you're not consistently playing 900 rated golf, then there is something going on between the ears that we can work on and try to help you improve, because it's your shot decisions, it's your mental ability to overcome, it's that grace that may not be being given to yourself. I think those are the major factors holding you back, because on a pure disc golf execution standpoint, if you can throw 250 feet with accuracy and make all of your 20-footers and then you can play 900 rated golf. So let me be part of your journey and helping you. FoundationDisc.com, check it out, Get Better tab. Let's hang out and have a little lesson. Our fourth shot, that is the most important one, is your first forehand of the round. I always chuckle because I think about playing with Josh from Overthrow, and he is the one that I felt like said it the most when we first started playing together. Is he'd walk up and be like, all right, first forehand of the round, here we go. And then I think there was a crew that I used to play with, Mike Calhoun and Justin Randall and Logan and company. So like they would step up, and a couple of them were really big forehand players, and that was also a point of conversation, is first forehand of the day. So there's something about that first forehand that always feels a little different. I personally hate when my first forehand of the day is a ripping forehand drive. So I love when I can just grab a zone and I can make that my first forehand of the day. Now I'm going to be throwing the Jawbreaker zone first, just because it has a little more grip, and unlike the Battle Pack zones, which is the ringer top one I'm using, it doesn't have the tooling on the inside from Discraft. But I'm finding when I have really cold hands that that tooling actually feels like it gives me a little bit extra grip and tack on the zone. So this is just a nice easy shot that we should be throwing, but we're gonna go forehand nice and wide, and then we're gonna let it fade down that hill. It should give us a nice skip. We'll go with the Battle Pack. That one's gonna be way more aggressive, and it's down there. Now, first forehand of the day is important, but we kind of teased the two biggest tips I would give you for overcoming that first forehand of the day. Your first forehand of the day, doesn't have to be on the course. When you show up early like a person trying to improve, it can just be that first in the warm-up tee shot time. If you are throwing backhand warm-ups, you might as well, if you know that there's a chance you're gonna throw forehands while you're on the course, might as well throw one of those as well. And very similarly to how we talked about on your first shot of the day, throwing something low effort that you don't have to like rip full power into really helps those muscles get loose for the day, as well as let you understand, hey, here's what's working for me today and here's what's not working for me today. And I love throwing my putt and approach discs on forehands generally, but especially for that first forehand of the day, I love using my zones for that shot because it just lets me say, hey, let's pop these, let's get them out and let's do something cool with them. Always encourage first forehands being with that low effort piece, because if you go into it and your first forehand of the day has to be this max power, huge rip, kind of drive, most often that's going to lead into rolling the wrist and turning it over, which is going to cause some issues and calamity the whole rest of the day as you go throughout the round. Now, we talked about a lot of firsts throughout the round, and the last shot that we're going to discuss is what we're going to affectionately call the baggage shot, because this is the shot that is going to be baggage that you will use to remember this round and carry with you in all of the free time, whether that is an hour or two of a lunch break between rounds at a C tier, or whether that is baggage you're going to carry with you from Sunday afternoon all the way to the next Saturday when you go through your work week and you get out to play again. Now, there are two aspects of the baggage shot, and that is, do we throw the baggage shot poorly or do we throw the baggage shot well? Because if we throw the baggage shot well, then it should be fantastic baggage for us to carry throughout the rest of the week, because we're going to hold on to this shot and remember, wow, played really good golf recently. That was awesome. That's so good. But I will be the first to admit that you have to be in a really good place mentally, and also you have to have a lot of mental resolve in order for the baggage shot to overcome even some poor shots throughout the round. I think there are people that just want to not give themselves the grace, the perfectionists, and they're going to look at a minus 16 or a minus 15 under par round, and instead of letting the baggage shot carry, or even if it's not minus 15, let's say it's your personal best. You shot 5 under par at a course that you've basically never gone under par at before. When we explain the baggage shot, that should be good, but if you're not in the right place mentally, what you're probably gonna end up doing is saying, oh, well, I missed this putt here, or I missed this, and that could have led to this. The coulda, woulda, shouldas, we kind of have to leave those out the door, but that's a whole other video that we'll probably do here in a couple weeks, but I thought this was a more interesting approach to the mental side of things. So, what is the baggage shot? The baggage shot is the last tee shot or shot of importance that goes through the round. It doesn't always have to be the final tee shot. It doesn't always have to be the final putt, whatever it may be. I know for me, my baggage shot usually comes around hole 16 or 17, because if I can throw this shot really well, I have the confidence and I'm carrying the good baggage into hole 18 to play it traditionally well. If I'm walking into hole 16 or 17 and I throw the baggage shot poorly, then I'm picking up that baggage and I'm carrying it into hole 18 without a lot of confidence. So often hole 18 is just a confirmation or a shock to the system of what happened on the baggage shot. This is one of my favorite pin positions because I know that I can get a mid all the way up there. I know I can do it. But what I love about this hole, and why I think this hole ends up being a baggage shot for so many, because there is, to this last big tree on the right, there's a short pin located just behind it. That is sort of a brain off. I get really, honestly, I get a little bit tilted if I don't birdie that short pin position. However, I think that every other pin position on this hole, because there's one right there that we can see the yellow basket, on the other side of those double trees about 40 feet back is a third pin position, and then about 60 feet back and right of the current yellow basket is the fourth pin position. All three of the remaining shots, I feel like I have to throw a really good drive or make a really great putt in order to get the birdie. It's one of my favorite holes on the course for that. The other fun part is that this whole left side is OB. So for me, as someone who struggles with backhand and hyzer, struggles with backhand turnover. I love this hole because the cheap way out is for me to throw a forehand sort of up the left side and either make it past the double trees or just cut right inside and skip up the hill. But in order to make myself a better player, I have to commit to throwing this backhand turnover. However, if I throw it poorly, if I early release it, if I let the pocket collapse, it's going uphill and I throw it nose up, which would cause it to fade into the OB on the left side. This is a phenomenal baggage shot claim because it's important, and I know it's not a shot that I'm particularly great at. So if I can throw it well, I'm gonna have great baggage to carry with me throughout the rest of the week. I'm gonna love that baggage. And if I throw it poorly, I'll just be reminding myself for the rest of the week, oh, you are terrible at that shot. So what it makes you think is that I was trying to throw it to the short basket. I just overcommitted to throwing the anhyzer, but I'm gonna walk away, and while the shot is probably gonna result in a par, I get to walk away and say, you know what? We committed, we threw it, we had anhyzer angle. I don't feel like the pocket collapsed too much, and it stayed on anhyzer the entire way. Let's pick up that positive baggage and carry it with us not only through 18, but also the rest of the week. And my hope is, as we're discussing the baggage shot, that some of you are realizing that, yeah, hole 18 isn't the baggage shot. Hole 16 is a hole that traditionally trips you up, and you feel like whenever you make it past hole 16 on that course with a par or maybe even a birdie, you're on top of the world and you soar through 17 and 18. Or even if you do mess up 17 and 18, hole 16 felt so good that that's the high note for you for the week. That is your baggage shot. And I think where you can identify those type of important shots and not just saying it's the last one of the last hole, that's when you're really going to start to see how certain holes impact a bit of a run on the course. Because this same mentality can be used for, oh, I usually struggle with, if we look at Connor and his Break 60 series, hole 9 is a baggage shot for him. If he can throw a great tee shot on hole 9, he's going to feel amazing heading into the rest of the hole. However, that hole has so much importance to him that if it goes poorly, he picks up the confirmation luggage and he carries that with him. There are important shots happening all over the course, and we can feel that run and we can identify them in order to say, hey, let's take a breather, let's disc up a little bit, throw an easier time with this shot, and watch how taking the pressure off of that one important shot makes the rest of them so much easier. Let's try to get spicy. We'll go polecat, try to throw it in. I would be lying if I said that I didn't short stroke my backswing because I didn't want to smack my hand into the thorns again. And that's about how I thought that would go. I didn't think it was like a terrible shot by any means, but it certainly wasn't enough juice to actually be thrown in. It just kind of went doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Landed soft and short. Whenever I'm trying to throw those up shots, I always want to give myself a chance at throwing it in, which means that if I miss, I want to be landing back here, because then it actually had a spot. So shout out to you, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Mike Strauss, teach me up shots. So that's gonna wrap it up for today's video. I hope this was helpful. This is like a little bit of a different twist, going back to our roots of some mental tips. And I'm sorry if we weren't as silly as normal. I have to be 100% honest. It was pure survival. I'm not a winter golfer, but I tried to lean into what you guys do. But you know what? I'll just bundle up next time, put a few more layers on underneath. How would they know? How would they know? How would they know? So thank you as always for watching. Let me know which of those 5 shots is most important for you, or you find yourself struggling with the most throughout the round. But as always, I want to say thank you for watching. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Please make it fantastic for someone else too. But for now, we're going to leave you with the birdie.